Let's do it.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode. What the hell was that? I'm sorry, some noise happened. Episode 78 of the Vito X DINO podcast. My name is Vito Delsante. His name is Dean Haspiel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dean Haspiel.
And today we have a special guest with us, a longtime friend of mine, uh, another fellow writer, fellow creator. Some of his CV, Nightmare World, Tales of Mr. Ree, multiple volumes of Tales of Mr. Ree. Um, Successful on Kickstarter as well. Hope, another one that has a couple of volumes that was successful on Kickstarter. He wrote the Arn Anderson and Tony Schiavone bio comics for any wrestling fans out there, and possibly more pertinent to my interest and uh, something that I personally own and I'm very happy to own is his Writer Wrong, a writer's guide to creating comics, which was a collection of essays he had done online, collected into a book. Mr. Dirk Manning, welcome to the podcast.
No, thank you so much for having me, man. It's crazy, when you sit there and hear someone else talk about all the stuff you've done. It's like, wow, I've been around a minute, haven't I?
Yeah.
But thank you. It's good that we're finally all getting to chat like this in the public sphere, I guess, after always seeing each other on, at shows and stuff like that.
Yeah,
We're just
absolutely.
passing like two ships in the night.
Yeah. The funny thing is, I think I was kind of introduced to your work in through the guys at Superfly Comics.
Mhm.
And then we were doing the wrestling podcast and we had you on the show. So that's how we got to know each other.
Yeah,
Funny
yeah.
enough, through wrestling more than through comics, I think. Uh,
Yeah, gosh, that was a minute ago. Yeah, I still talk to Tony Berry,
yeah,
as regularly as I guess any of us get to chat when we're running businesses and things like that. But yeah, it's funny because it's so interesting because this is and I know this doesn't pale to a lot of people per se, but I think this is my 23rd year as a published writer. And it's so fascinating to me because, like you said, there's people that know me from Right or Wrong. And then there's people that know me from Nightmare World. And then there's people that know me from the fact I got to do a couple of wrestling comics. So it's almost like generational, like where people know
yeah.
me from. Those people that know me from Hope, from when we did that for Free Comic Book Day for Source Point Press. So it's cool. And then how over time all of these different fandoms, they all start to kind of weave together into
Right.
this
Well,
brain.
Dirk, you're kind of almost describing my schizophrenic career as well. Like
Right.
we hopscotch all over the place, and like no one can peg you. So it's almost like, who are you? Or I've heard of you, and like, or unless you've done something substantial, where you're known for
Mhm.
that one thing, and sometimes you get stuck being known for that one thing, and it could be, your milestone or the thing that put you on the map. For many many years. I think what broke me a little bit, and I don't mean broke in a bad way, but like put me on the map, might
Sure.
have been doing the Quitter with Harvey Picar for
Right.
Vertigo. And I feel like then it was like, okay, this guy is still sticking around. I had been published first time in 1987, and then
Mm.
that was like 2005 or something like that. So, and again, bobbing and weaving and
Right.
working doing superhero memoir all over the place and then web comics and whatnot, so like it's the same kind of idea as like you've been around doing for 23 years. What is it, 87? How many years is that? I can't even do the math.
Well,
But
we're
30
almost in
something,
2027.
It would
30
be
plus.
about 29 years,
Oh, almost 40.
something like that. Yeah.
Oh,
Because I
no,
was
no.
14 in 87 and I'm
Wow.
53 now. So
Right,
I'm
right.
trying not to show I'm counting on my fingers under here. So it's like 87, like 97,
Yeah, yeah.
2007, 2008. Yeah,
So
about
it's
40 years, man.
40 years. So,
But yeah,
but it is crazy. And like, it's funny when you were saying, it's Mr. Ree, Rhee, right?
yeah,
And then I was thinking, remember that comic Miss Tree
yeah,
mystery. Yep.
that's Alan
Yep.
Collins.
and Max Allen Collins, and I forget who the artist was.
Harry Beatty, I think.
Hmm.
Oh, really? Okay. And I love when people play, but you know me with my characters. Half the time I'm playing with words
Right.
and puns all the time. So yeah. And then you do. I mean, I feel like the thing I know you best for is that how you're writing comics book, or that
Mhm.
collection, you know. Um, and what do you think you're best known for?
Gosh, you know, it it keeps evolving. Honestly, I'm gonna give you the honest answer. I would like to say Well, like I was one of the first people, I was in that first cohort of us, and I do mean us, who was publishing fully realized comics online, right? I mean, there was that minute when Activate was going on, and I was part of
Mm.
that with Len O'Grady, or like so like Nightmare World to me is always like, because that was my first comic series, and it was one of the first fully realized online comics back in 2003. Part of me always wants to be the Nightmare World guy, but I'll tell you honestly, and it's something that we all were just screwing around with right before we came on the air, and it's this,
Mm.
right? It's that brand of the guy in the top hat and the scarf.
Oh, right.
And it's
Oh,
funny because I chose that avatar as my, not only like my author photo, but my brand, because I didn't want to be known as that guy for that one thing,
Mm.
right?
that's so interesting.
I,
Because in a way, it's not backfired necessarily in a bad way, but you have been branded as the guy who covers his face,
right,
wears the
right,
top
right.
hat, looks like a particular type of character. And for the listeners, which I think we have more listeners than watchers, can you describe this character a little
Yeah,
more,
yeah, yeah.
where the origin of it?
Yeah, my author photo basically it's a guy like in a black coat with a black scarf and sunglasses and a top hat, and the reason that I went with that gimmick, and it actually really especially came out of me doing Right or Wrong, but even before that, way back in the MySpace days, right? Um, it was a situation where I didn't want to be as proud as I am to this day of Nightmare World. And, Source Point Press just, I'll put in a cheap plug right off the bat. Source Point Press, we're just offering a re-release of Nightmare World, the complete collection. So that book's been in print forever. And we're doing a nice omnibus collection out through Source Point Press that people can pre-order at their local comic shops if they like horror. I'm super proud of that book, but I knew from the beginning I didn't want my brand to be tied to any one thing. Now, it's very important to me that whether you're reading Right or Wrong, Writer's Guide to Creating Comics, or Nightmare World, or the book I did with Arn Anderson, or Love Stories About Death, whatever, pick anything from my resume. I always want there to be that thread, like that reads like a Dirk Manning book, right? Like I can associate that with him. However, when social media first started to bubble up, or at least when I started using it. I mean, I wasn't active on like Friendster and things like that. I wasn't there, right? But with MySpace, and then especially doing the column Right or Wrong for Newsarama back in the day, I knew I needed a brand. And honestly, in full transparency, I'm not a photo guy. I don't like being in photos. It's taken me many, many years to even be comfortable talking on video like this. You'll still see right now, those of you watching, I inevitably find myself like doing this, like
Covering your
just covering
face.
my face and
And it's
stuff.
funny because you have a great face. You actually look like a character actor on like a 70s TV
Yeah,
show.
totally.
Thank you.
Like a
I
Bob
appreciate
Conrad.
it. But even back in before my comic days, my music journalism days, like no one knew who I was except for my byline because I was so actively like, oh, people are taking out the cameras, and all of a sudden, like, where's Dirk? Poof, just gone. Right, So I wanted, and then when I started doing conventions, I wanted some sort of avatar, something that you could associate with me no matter what I was doing. And I was talking to a buddy of mine about it, Jim Reddington, who did lettering on my comics for years, and another a New York guy, and he goes, "I've got just the idea." And then he pitched it to me, and I just started laughing because it was so perfect, and it played into the fact that like I like ignore the man behind the curtain, right? I mean, I'm sometimes notoriously kind of like a private person. So the idea of Dirk Manning being this writer who has a top hat and a scarf and glasses and things like that, it became a gimmick to me that was just really funny. But then little did I know that it would take on such a life of its own, to the point that early on people would like try to get photos of me like quote unquote unmasked, not realizing
My kiss.
I don't dress like this in real life. It's a gimmick, right? And then the whole covering the face thing, when I started doing live appearances, and this happened almost right off the jump, people would want to get pictures, right, for MySpace or whatever. And people started saying, "Oh my gosh, well, I'd love to get a picture with you, but people can't know what you look like." And it was readers who said, "Well, just cover your face with the book." I didn't even start that. And I
Yeah.
was like, "Well, yeah, that works." Well, then it became again more branding, because whenever you see pictures of me publicly, right, it's like you'll see me like here. I just did a piece in Comics and Magazine #5. So there you go, Adam Freeman and Prana. So this is the picture, right? Like, hey, here it is, right? So then it became like an additional level of branding, like, oh, he's always promoting his new book, he's always promoting his new work. And
Well,
it
it kind of works a little bit. I mean, what backfired on me was I don't know if you remember this or know this, but I was known as the guy who took off his shirt like
yep,
in public.
yep.
And like that's what will be on my gravestone. Not any comic I wrote or drew or
Hmm.
collaborated on or anything I've ever made. It'd be like that guy took off his shirt at the Comic Cons, like
Right,
and like I feel like and then sometimes people will ask me to do it, not because they just because I'm like their monkey or something. And I'm like,
right,
I'm not gonna do that. I mean, I'll do it on my own. And people will be shocked to realize that I feel like I'm super shy, and half the reason why we'll take off my shirt or be, provocative is to bury this shyness that I have that creeps
right.
up on me.
Forces you to get out there, right?
It makes you have to,
Yeah,
and my dad would tell me stories about certain like actors that what they would do to get out of to embody a role and to perform in front of other people and pretend or seek the truth through the artwork, kind of thing.
mhm.
So yeah, I know what you mean, and it's funny because like it's almost like people could cosplay you, like
And
if
it's
they wanted
happened.
to.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's happened. One of the coolest things was I did a show in the town where I grew up. It was fantastic on Toledo. And because it's where I grew up, and my grandfather, who I miss him terribly. He was very, very important in my life. He actually came out to the Comic-Con. And the day he came out, because he lived nearby, him and my grandma both, and I'm still my grandma, I'm very close with her. But a buddy of mine who's like, he's got to be like 6'4", 6'5", and he came out cosplayed as Dirk Manning, the Dirk Manning avatar. So here's a dude that's like
The
6', I
Globetrotter
believe,
version.
right? And then he's got this big top hat on and stuff. And he happened to show up when my grandpa was there. Right. So I got the banner behind me with the avatar and stuff, and I'm talking to my grandpa at my table. And out of nowhere, this giant Dirk Manning guy walks up, and it just blew my grandpa away. And he's like, wow, this is really like a thing, because he saw Spider-Mans and stuff like
Sure,
that,
sure, of course. But they're all over the
and
place, and then
all
you
over.
show up. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And then like the guy shows up who is me behind the table. And it just really kind of clicked for him, like what a kind of a gimmick it was. And it was just one of those memories I'll carry with me forever. And
no,
it's
it's awesome. I remember thinking there are two ways to know that you've made it, and I've only achieved one of the two, and that was eons ago. I was walking the East Village when I used to live there, and
Mhm.
I looked at a light pole, where the "Don't Walk" sign kind of thing,
Yeah.
and lots of people just staple and tape up like what their band is playing and where that week or whatever. And someone had stolen some of my artwork from a comic I did from a
Oh
Billy
wow.
Dogma thing, one of my
Yeah.
own characters,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they had
Was on
used
the
it
band
and then
flyer.
just for a band flyer. And I was like, yo,
Awesome. Yeah.
I have made it. And the
Hmm.
other way is if you're, well, either in your case, you've been cosplayed, but I was gonna say if somebody dressed up like it's the Red Hook or something,
Yeah.
I would know that, okay, I've made some kind of dent in the zeitgeist.
The
Yeah.
coolest thing that ever happened was at Baltimore for me. Somebody had cosplayed as one of the secondary characters in Stray, the Theory,
Oh
and
wow.
both Sean and I were both there, and it was just
That's
nice that we
Oh,
both got to experience that.
that's
that's
interesting.
Is
incredible.
there anybody
But
else?
but Vito, before you move forward,
Oh yeah, yeah.
like just like, but you have mistaken people cosplaying you when really they're just doing Uncle Fester.
I
Oh,
Like
mean,
come on.
you say that, but very famous story. Jen Van Meter tapped me on the shoulder thinking I was Greg Rucka. So
oh, okay,
her
that's
Well, there
not
you
husband
bad.
go, right?
was.
That
I,
works.
I'll tell you this before we move on from the whole cosplay and all that stuff. This is another true thing. I swear to you, I swear on everything, I'm not making this up. During COVID, when we were all masked up, I got recognized more out in public at
Mm,
grocery stores and
hmm
things like that than I
hmm
do like this with just my naked, unmasked, horrible
Right.
visage.
Yep.
Literally, I was in grocery stores and stuff, and naturally my mask was black, and I had people come up to me like, "Pardon me, like, are you Dirk Manning, that comic book writer?" So again, it just is one of those things, man. It's just
Yep.
what a
Yep.
world,
Yep.
what a world.
What's
Yep.
what's funny is that like I've always like before I knew you and before I actually, did podcasts, the PCW podcast on the podcast network back when,
What was
uh,
that?
you were like a personality, like, because of that avatar. And I'm racking my brain and I'm thinking, I can only think of one other person that was their brand, and that would be Harvey Picar. Like, I can't think of anybody else that was like either, you know, maybe Morrison with King Mob, but I don't think that translates like it does with you. Like you were Dirk Manning, that avatar, before you were Dirk Manning, the guy I talked about with wrestling. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like it's a very, what a weird like world.
Well, think about the master was Stan Lee,
Right.
Sure.
the master of like
Alan
persona
Moore,
building.
yeah, Alan Moore is another one, and he's
Sure.
admitted over the years, like he quaffs that image, and then of course Grant Morrison and stuff like that, and even people like Ellis or Ennis to an extent, right? By his lack of
Mhm.
engagement in that way, but
Mhm.
it's all brand management, and like you were saying, Dean, especially the truth of the matter is I'm a very introverted, private person. I'm a writer, and you can see like those of you watching my office. I'm like surrounded by graphic novels and books and the stuff I like, and like not to go back to that time, but like when COVID happened, it's like I'm okay to stay in the house. All my stuff is here.
Yeah.
A lot of us were
Yeah,
okay during COVID. It's
yeah, yeah.
weird. Like,
I don't need the people, but that to your point of that brand, and then having that brand, it allowed me to realize sometimes you got to turn it on, right? I mean, no one will sell your babies like you
Yeah.
will, things like that. And that's not to say it's disingenuous and that the public Dirk Manning is separate than who I am privately, but it's just kind of like if you go into a job interview, you put on a suit, right? And like right now, I'm not wearing a suit. I'm chatting with two friends of mine, but when it when I do conventions and I'm sharing rooms with my buddies and stuff, they'll bust my ass a lot of times. Like, oh, he's dirking up because they can just watch like that, like going into that place. Like, okay, I need to be on, not in a disingenuous fashion, but I need to be ready to people. I need to be ready to engage. And I'll tell you what, once the convention's over, or even once this podcast is over, although because we know each other so well, I'm a little more relaxed. But it's just, and maybe you guys experienced this. I'm just
right.
shut down. I'm just drained. I'm emotionally drained. I just want to go get a piece of pizza, go get a burger, go back to the room and just
Mhm.
You don't have to be on anymore.
don't have to be
My
on.
my dad, who knew Marilyn Monroe, tells a story that you'll appreciate where he had gotten to know her, the Norma Jean, not the character she created, Marilyn, as
Right.
he puts it. And everybody wants her to be Marilyn, but after a while, you just you're not doing that. And then he said he was hanging out with her in front of her building, and then one person kind of was walking by, noticed her, kind of stopped. Another person, and right before his very eyes, she basically changed into Marilyn. Like she
Right,
changed
right.
her eyebrows, her mouth, everything,
Yep.
and
Yep.
said something like, "She's like, I think I have to go now." And he says something like, "I think you have to go now too. I don't even know you." Something like that. So yeah, I mean, listen, I think we all have parts of our persona that are activated more in especially when we're communicating to other people, and we just we are who we are, when we're not around people. I mean, that's just obvious to me. But when you create a character, let's say, to be able to move around those halls and around those tables, and I mean, I also just, I mean, the way you're talking right now, I know we're friendly, so maybe that's a part of it. But that's the Dirk I know, is the one
Right.
I'm talking to right now,
Right.
which is a
Right.
very kind, super generous, encouraging. Every time you've talked to me, like in Baltimore, you always have open arms, and because you've been in certain positions of like Source Point Press, which we'll talk about, you've always invited me, even when you weren't the publisher. You were like,
Yeah.
come on,
Yeah.
come over to talk to the publisher, and kind of a thing. So you've always been super supportive in that way, and I appreciate that. And then I'm going to veer into this question, which is a weird and hard question to ask, which is your writing style. So Vito and I have talked in the past, like, what is Vito's writing style? What is mine? Mine's a little easier because if you read my my stuff, it's kind of hyperbolic and corny and heartfelt, and Vito sometimes will say that it's kind of like has a what do you call it? Like not bebop. What am I trying to say? Beatnik kind of style to it. But I do that purposely because I'm trying to learn how to write, and I'm still like in Shakespeare Stan Lee mode. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm still using words to again to be provocative or to really. And I don't know, but and what do you feel like if you could say what your style like you were saying before, you want to be recognized for the way you write, or that would be a Dirk Manning story. Like, what does that mean to you? What does that look like or sound like?
Theme. To me, everything I write comes down to what's the theme. Very early on, I read a very short but very influential book by Alan Moore about writing. And I talk about this very early in Right or Wrong about how everyone has plots, right? You can argue there's 7 plots. You can argue there's only 3 plots. You can argue there's only 1 plot. Any story I write, it really, the thing to me is the theme and what do I want to say? Whether it be a short story, whether it be a long form series, whether it be a book about writing, even whether it be like one of the biographical comics I've done or something like that. To me, it all comes down to like theme and like, what are we saying about this? Now, I'll give you an example because I know theme can be such a weird, nebulous term, that can be interpreted a lot of different ways. When I was approached by Mike Dawkins, who's now known online as like the gimmick attorney, to write a graphic novel for Tony Schiavone. And we had talked about this. We first met with a mutual love of professional wrestling. I used to watch professional wrestling with my great grandma. I still watch wrestling to this day. I love professional wrestling. When he approached me about writing a graphic novel about Tony Schiavone's life in professional wrestling, here's this very established person. My response, and I wasn't being flippant, I wasn't being cute, was I'm not opposed to having that discussion. It wasn't a yes. And the reason I said I'm not opposed to any discussion, because to me it was about what is this book going to say? And I don't mean that in like a pretentious, like artistic, like, oh, what is this book going to say about, but rather, if I'm going to dedicate my time and I dare say my brain and my name to something, I want that story to say something. I don't just want to retell the events of this guy's life. So and ironically, this happened again. This is weird. This keeps coming up right before COVID. But it happened right before COVID. So rather than meeting in person, we Zoomed. And when I was talking to Tony about the idea for Butts and Seats, the Tony Schiavone story, the working title in my brain for what the book became, again, eventually became Butts and Seats. But the working title in my mind was A Life Among Giants. Because here's this guy who loved wrestling since he was little and is this kind of like not an athlete, and I dare say this almost self-deprecating, unassuming guy who his whole job is to put over the stories and the attributes of these freakish giant super athletes. And I don't think people recognize what truly genetic freaks professional wrestlers are at that caliber until they really get to know them, right? So to me, the reason I agreed to write the book with Schiavone was because it was about, here's this normal person with this life putting over and telling the stories of these super athletes and what it was like for a normal person to navigate that lifestyle. That was the theme to me. That was fascinating to me. When you look at a book like Tales of Mystery, conversely, which is my longest running horror series, that book, look, man, at its core, it's a book about a guy who fights monsters and demons. Been done a million times, whether it's Hellboy, The Goon, Hellblazer, you Dylan Dog, you name it. But to me, what I really wanted to talk about with that book was, how does a person who fights supernatural stuff function in day-to-day life? How do you make friends, right? If anybody could be a vampire, a monster, or something like that, and you're like, how do you really function in that world? And of course, like John Constantine's very suave and stuff like that. And, I mean, Hellboy, everyone knows he's a big red monster or whatever. But I wanted to explore, as a lifelong horror fan, I wanted to explore what would that be like. So then I took it one step farther and I said, okay, what if we really invert this? And we make it so that And in Tales of Mystery, there was a 3-day biblical Armageddon, the 3 days of darkness. So it's not that people think he's crazy for knowing monsters are real, because everyone knows monsters are real. They dealt with it for 3 days, but everyone thinks it's done and gone. So then how do you become that guy? And really the book became almost like a long form meditation on post-traumatic stress disorder, right? Because like how do you interface and how does that stuff affect you? So I know it's a long answer to a short question with two very divergent examples, but to me that's what it's about, the theme. Like, don't just give me the plot. Make comment. I like to comment on things. I like to offer some perspective and insight on various situations.
No, and I think that that's the key is, and I've learned this over the years because you get caught up in plot and a twist,
Mhm.
but if you don't care about the characters, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Or if you don't know what the story is about, I'm always trying to figure out what is the story about, like even when I do, and it's harder the less pages you have,
Oh yeah,
like because
yeah.
you got to nail something, even if it's a little note of a feeling or an idea, like
Mhm.
what are things about, and it's hard because what you start to do is you start to realize you're trending. You've written enough stories. I'll bet you can look at a lot of your stories and go, yep, I kept revisiting that idea over and
Oh,
over and over,
totally,
you know
totally. Yeah, it's funny. My first comic series I ever did was Nightmare World. It's a collection of 52 8-page stories, and each story written by me, drawn by a different artist or art team, but each one's a different subgenre of horror. Because when I started, I thought I might only get one chance ever to do a comic.
Yeah.
And what do I want to do? And back in the early 2000s, horror had really fallen out of favor in comics and short story had fallen out of favor in comics. And I love horror and I love short stories. And here I am, young and full of piss and vinegar. And I said, I'm going to show people, and this is my attitude at the time, right? I'm going to show people how well you can do this. And I'm going to show people that short horror stories are not throwaway for your stupid little like one-off twist idea. How do we actually tell theme in 8-page stories at the rate of 2 pages a week online and do a new story every month and nail a theme and nail a theme and say something and say something and say something and say something. Uh, so yeah, you're exactly right. And in those stories, it's funny because I didn't even have the luxury of getting into character there, right?
hmm
You really know these
You're also
characters,
reminding me of, like, I mean, EC Comics. Now, I
right?
can't say that a lot of them were great stories. They're probably just, going for the 1-2 punch at the end, the twist or
Right.
whatever. And a lot of the writing was verbose, or whatever. But
Yeah.
it still was a great genre and a great anthology. And I'm starting to wonder. I know that there's a glut in superhero movies right now, maybe even
Mhm.
superhero comics, and God knows I contribute to that with my take. Um, but I think horror might be, here comes the word, trumping superheroes in terms of, I think there's an appetite, more of an appetite for horror than ever before, and I
You
can't
could
figure out why.
you could also say that like something like Absolute Batman, the success of it is because it's not a conventional superhero story. It does lean
Mhm.
into horror tropes in some ways,
And bootleg. I mean, we've discussed
Yeah,
this. It's got
yeah.
that bootleg vibe, right? So
Right. Well, we've been in a golden age of horror for the last couple of years now. And I know some horror fans hate the term elevated horror, but when you go back to things like whether it be Train to Busan or The Babadook or Heredity and Midsummer, the Ari Aster stuff, or even to an extent now stuff like Back Rooms, right? And but then the pendulum swings the other way, and then Terrifier blows up because it's the exact opposite of elevated horror.
because you need the back and forth,
Because you
the
need you need that
splatter
pendulum.
porn, and then the
Right.
heady kind of ambient horror.
Yes. But I've always said this about horror because at the end of the day, as much as I love comics and I love everything this medium has done for me, and I dedicate my life to this, I tell everybody, I'm a horror guy who loves comics. I'm not a comic guy who loves horror.
Hmm.
And the reason I love horror so much is I think as a genre, horror speaks better to the human condition than any other genre because it addresses this one question better than anything else. What would you do if?
Yeah, yeah. It
That's
has to
that's the
include you.
foundation.
It has to make you think before you find out the answer in the movie what they're going to do. You'd be like, wait, what would
Bingo.
I do?
Right. I'm not scared of vampires, right? I would like to say I've lived my whole life without ever meeting a real vampire, but I'm not sure that's accurate at this point in my life
Eh,
due to a thing in New Orleans years ago. But anyway, but so let's say werewolves. I've never met a werewolf my whole life, right? I'm convinced I'm going to live my life never meeting a real werewolf. So to me, a werewolf in and of itself is not scary. However, let's say that all of us are at a comic convention, for example, and all of a sudden, like we look down the aisle and like a pack of werewolves comes like just galloping down the aisle and mauling people. The story to me is not the werewolves, it's we all know each other to various degrees of familiarity. What are the three of us going to do when they start coming down our aisle? What are the people around us going to do? What would you do if I use the Walking Dead example all the time because it's a good pop culture one? People would watch or read The Walking Dead. And I think it's more watch it than read it. In this example, everyone wants to think they would be Rick, but how many people would really be Shane?
Mm.
and if did you see 28 weeks later?
Oh, yes.
So the premise is that survivor's guilt, because
Yep.
should the husband have jumped in front of and died as well with his wife?
Mm-hmm.
Or it just circumstance he was on the other side of a bed in a room when zombies are coming in and there's no way she's going to live, and
Right.
he has to close the door on her to survive.
Right.
And the
Right.
rest of the fucking movie is about that. It
It's
talks
that
about that's the theme.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. And you can tell that story in like a romance story to an extent or
sure.
action adventure, but then you get in like women in refrigerator stuff and all that. But
Yeah, yeah,
horror, you get to live in that theme. You get to
yeah,
live
yeah,
in that space. And that's oh, you can just see I'm like drooling almost. I'm like, yeah, that's to me,
yeah,
that's where the meat of the best stories is. And we can explore that concept. And and I yeah, all
yep,
day, all day.
yep. I wanted to bring up, and Vito, I know in terms of structure of today's episode, I want to get to the source point press, like how Dirk got to that, and
Mm.
then we have that great question later that you proposed.
Oh,
I have a couple of notes here, unless you have some as well, Vito.
I
Um,
do, but I want to get to what you're looking at right
all
there.
right, I can get into a couple little like pop culture things, but before I do that, because we can also take a little side break here. But I did want to give big ups to Tommy Lombardozzi and Mike D for their ninth anniversary episode of Jacked
Yeah.
Kirby, number 325, featuring, and I helped them get him, Frank Miller.
Oh,
oh,
So they got Frank Miller talking a little bit about Kirby and whatnot. So I just listened to
wow.
it today. That's a coup.
That's up now.
Congratulations, guys. That's
That's
up
up
now,
now.
just today.
I'll
Just
see you
today.
guys later.
Yeah, I know. And I wanted to mention that Dirk and I were interviewed for the same Publishers Weekly article
Yes.
about Kickstarter comics.
hmm.
That maybe that's how we can maybe veer now into Source Point Press a little bit. But I mean, I just want to make sure we've covered like the fact that you've been writing comics for 23 years, you said,
Yeah,
and
I believe so. Yeah,
you've
23 years.
been stuck with the brand for better or for worse. Uh, and but you've always, like, I guess like everybody else, you've hopscotched around between working for this person and that person. But
Mhm.
in this article, it was talking about, I forget the title, but like the brave new world of Kickstarter comics or something like
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah.
and how a lot of publishers are using Kickstarter to publish comics.
Mhm.
And I guess for me, and Vito, the same with you, like when you approach a publisher, are we automatically thinking, at least with small press, oh, we're going to kickstart this, aren't we? And then that means I'm going to do all my sources for the month, use all my sources. And it starts to become a question for me, like, how much is the publisher bringing to the table versus how much the creator is bringing to the table? And then when you're meeting in the middle, like sometimes I used to joke, oh, the publisher is synonymous with just paying the printer's bill, and that's it. Because
Well,
like
now there's no
marketing is out the
diamond.
window. What?
There's no diamond now, so it's like used to
I
be
know, and a lot of
publisher.
publishers scrambling to like Cosmic Line, for instance, just finally landed a distributor, and so I guess I would love to. It's a two-sided thing, which is let's talk about how you got your relationship with SourcePoint and now where you're at, and then your feelings. I know you wrote we it only got a little bit of us talking in this article. I'm sure you talked a lot more like I did, so it's just a truncated version. But let's talk about like your relationship with SourcePoint and the fact that you became publisher recently, and then we'll veer into Kickstarter.
So I'll go backwards, go forwards in regards to how I became publisher of SourcePoint Press. The short version is I worked myself into a job I never wanted. You know, um, I have always kind of viewed myself, to use a comic book analogy, it's kind of like Batman to the Justice League with publishers. I come in, I do my part, I really try to help. A high tide raises all ships. But at the end of the day, I have kind of existed as my own entity, my own brand. And I've been very fortunate. I got to work with Image Comics over the years. I published with them multiple books. Ironically, when at the time Image really wasn't interested in moving forward with creators using Kickstarter first, I jumped over to Devil's Due because Josh Blaylock was very good with the idea that I would use Kickstarter to fund the books. Um, but what ended up happening is, and again, here's the C word that keeps coming up, when COVID happened and distribution fell apart and things like that. SourcePoint was one of those publishers with Travis McIntyre and Josh Werner that got really hit pretty hard. They, the people that on the inside, I think, know more than the casual customers how much SourcePoint Press did to support stores during that time. But ultimately, the company also kind of grew into something that got away from its roots of really doing creator-owned comics. They got
I was going to
into,
ask, like, if you could describe Source Point Press before you took over, how
yeah.
would you simply describe the kind of comics that were being published?
Yeah, they really started by doing like creator-owned comics from a lot of like really kind of cutting-edge Midwest creators, especially, and things like that. But eventually, they continued to grow and they got into like doing some licensed IP. They got into like doing the Winchester Mystery House and some other things. They had a film produced, right? But they started to kind of veer away from what they were, which is like this scrappy Midwest convention heavy presence with focusing on their creators. Um, they grew away from that and they got too big. And then eventually they kind of started to collapse under their own weight. And due to distribution falling apart, like you were saying, Vito, and things
Yeah.
like that. And it got to the point, and I've said this publicly before, so I'm not talking out of school, where SourcePoint was gonna sunset. They were gonna shutter the company. And I've always enjoyed a very good relationship with both Travis and Josh. And I went to the warehouse and I talked to them and I said, don't do this. I said, there's a way that you can just get back to your roots. I said, go back to doing creator-owned graphic novels again and be a creator-first publisher. And you have so many creators now who are using things like Kickstarter. I said, and I talked about what I've always liked to do. I have never, for the most part, liked to rely on a publisher to pay for my printing. And that may sound very antithetical to a lot of my fellow creators out there, especially, but here's why. If they're paying for it to some degree, they own it. Right.
That's always in the contract, right? Like, if
Right.
they want a piece of it, I get it.
Right. Or conversely, then you are allowing the majority of your financial accounting to be handled by them. And I'll use a term that a lot of us in the industry know, you get into Hollywood accounting.
Yeah.
Right. They're constantly billing you back for your supposed royalties against print bills and things like that.
And lunch.
Yeah. Oh, don't get me started. Right. So, and again, this is where my kind of my Batman thing comes in, right? To me, I always said, because I've been able to build my own brand and build and develop that model where I can use crowdfunding and things like that. I said, look, man, I'll pay for the books myself. I own the books, and then you as a publisher distribute them, take your piece, but I own the IP and I own the stock because I work with a publisher. I'm not going to say which one, that I had problems getting copies of my own books to sell. And I'm like, this is a creator-owned publisher, and these are creator-owned books, but I have to backdoor my way into creating my own Diamond account to order my books at wholesale? No. No.
Well, then let me ask you this. Let me ask you,
Yeah.
because I appreciate everything you're saying, and like we're here, like, I mean, me and Vito talk almost every other week about this kind of like conundrum of
Mhm.
self-publishing, and Vito's been currently in cahoots with Charlie McKelvey at Scion Press. Um, and actually Vito has like 1,000 comics. I don't know if Charlie's going to publish them all, or you're
No,
going
of
to
course not.
talk to other publishers, with, but like, I think one of the things that a lot of creators don't want to deal with the business of
Correct.
comics, because the business of comics sucks. So that's why you go to a publisher to deal with the business, right?
Correct.
And what is a publisher supposed to do? Supposedly is get the comic printed, get the comic distributed, and get people to know about the comic. That's basically, and then they get a cut of, at least they get a cut of that, of course. Do they actually get to own part of the IP? Well, therein lies the question. If you're just publishing comics, I think maybe not. But if you are a publisher that has a relationship with Hollywood and merch and help create merch and a TV show, movie, whatever, then maybe that does suffice, in the wheeling and dealing. That they can do that and offer that. I wonder. And then there's some publishers who are like, we don't do that. We only publish comics. They don't deal with agents and all that stuff that's going on.
Here's the thing. I have seen so many creators fall down the rabbit hole of being emotionally, financially, or even intellectually victimized by this whole notion of this Hollywood thing. I'm not saying that people can't have a lot of success in Hollywood. You can. I've been very fortunate that I've enjoyed very close personal and professional relationships with people that have turned comic books into Hollywood stuff. Um, Gosh, I don't know if I've ever said this publicly yet, but I guess I'll say it now. There was a point when Steven Spielberg was looking at one of my properties. Okay. That you don't get any higher. But am I talking to you right now with a comic book that's been produced in any medium by Steven Spielberg? I am not. But let me tell you, I've seen so many people chase that dragon and never come back, and they sign away the rights, and they quit creating. At the end of the day, and this is the pitch I made to Travis and Joshua, Sourceway, to bring it back. I said, present this model to everyone else that I've always used with you guys. I said, you guys have access to cheap, to very economical printing, if you can print in bulk. I said, offer that to them, let them keep their own stock, keep their own rights, and the publisher just takes a piece of what they sell on behalf of the creator, which is the deal that I have always negotiated for myself. And for better, for worse, and I've had many trials and tribulations with this, I don't pitch. I create a book and then I offer it. And I offer it to a publisher. Do you want to publish this book? Yes or no? Gary Reed, may rest in peace.
Caliber Press.
Yep, Caliber. He published Right or Wrong because I offered it to him. Now, before that, I offered it to Image, and they just said, "Nah, we're not going to do it. This isn't what we want to do." Fine. And Gary was a friend of mine, a mentor of mine. He published it because it fit under one of Caliber's imprints at the time, Transfusion. But I am the person, I'm going to create the book. And whether I publish it online first, and then I kickstart it, or I crowdfund it, or I self-publish it, if I believe enough to put the time into this property, it's going to come out one way or another. And the pitch I've always made, the only pitch I've made to people is, do you want a piece of this action to utilize your infrastructure to get it out there to more people? I make this big impassioned plea to Travis and Josh. And if you know Travis McIntyre, and I love Travis, he's like a brother to me. But he's even more hideous than me. He's got that big ugly red beard and stuff. And he does this look. And if you know Travis, you know this, he goes like this, and he looks at me and he goes, "So why don't you do it?" And I worked to use the wrestling term, Vito, I worked myself right into a shoot.
Right into a shoot.
Right into a shoot. And at that moment, I had the angel and the devil on my shoulder. And literally, here's the voice in my head that said to me, "Well, Dirk, you've always been the guy," and you were very complimentary, Dean, and you probably saw me just shrink up when you said it. I don't take compliments very well, but you said how gracious I've always been about trying to help other people, get their stuff out there and things like that. And the little voice in the side of my head, on my shoulder, chirped at me and said, "Well, Dirk, you've always been the guy that's talked about helping other creators. And it's easy to write a column and then turn it into a book and put that out there. But now here's your chance to take it to the next level.
Money mouth.
Are you really that guy? Are you really that guy?"
Here's a question. So, like, at this point, you are, in the story, you're considering the offer. Are there publishers like actual publishers like an Eric Larson or somebody, that you were able to look at their work, let's say, or their the way they published books and say, I want to do that, I want to do that, but I don't want to do that. Were there any
100%.
examples for you? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I took some of the when I so spoiler, I did end up becoming publisher at SourcePoint Press, right?
Right.
And I think it's an open secret at this point. I mean, I own the company, right? It's mine now.
Oh, okay.
Now I'm pushing it forward. Um, but what I did was I took experiences from what I basically, yeah, yes, from Image Comics, from Devil's Due, from smaller publishers. But I also looked at creators who I really like Eric Powell. My God, the fact that throughout the course of human history, as comic creators, we get to live in the same time as someone like Eric Powell. What a I don't use this
Yeah,
word very what a
it's great.
blessing.
It's great.
Eric is a great dude. He's just so good. He gave me a lot of really good advice early on. But then my own experiences and what I decided with SourcePoint Press was everyone is going to get the same publishing agreement that I give myself. So it's kind of like the Hair Club for Men, right? It's like I'm not only the president, I'm a member.
How dare you?
Right.
Yeah, sorry. I know. I walked in. I apologize. Good day, sir. But when people come to me and say, well, can we amend these things in the publishing agreement? I tell them we cannot. Now, I will tell you in writing my intention for why it's written this way, and it's been vetted by several attorneys, including the comic book space. I signed this publishing agreement for myself, and I will tell you in writing why it's written this way, so that if things ever blow up, like you can literally say, look, here's what Dirk wrote in an email on this day. This is his intent. But in the contract, one of the most valuable things to me was also an escape clause. If you're not happy, go. Take your stuff. You own all your own IP anyway. Take your books. If we're storing them, we'll get them back to you and be on your way. If Scholastic wants to pick up Chest Face, but you're with SourcePoint Press right now, I hope you would stay with us. But if we're just a sub hop to your Nirvana, I'm not mad at you.
Right.
Go. So to me, to answer your question, but yeah, I picked a lot of threads from a lot of different people and decided what is the best possible contract that I always negotiate for myself, knowing that I don't pitch publishers, I offer publishers. And now every creator at SourcePoint Press, the chief creative officer, Josh Werner, who stayed with me on this journey, he's got the same publishing agreement. We all have the exact same one. It doesn't change for anybody. People say, oh, well, my lawyer said blah, blah, blah. It's like, cool. I passed this through different lawyers. I cannot give you a better deal than I give myself. This is it. And ultimately, what we offer at SourcePoint Press is someone else dubbed this term, and I loved it. Self-publishing with benefits. Right. And I'm like, yeah, there it is. Through our partnership with Prana, we have access to Lunar, Universal, Diamond UK. Through our own avenues, we have access to Simon and Schuster and things like that. We're getting ready to enter the library space, at least digitally. We got some other things going on, but also then you get the benefit of being part of this collective under SourcePoint Press that, again, going back to theme, right? There's certain types of books we publish, and if that type of comic, graphic novel, and by the way, we didn't do comics, we used to do graphic novels. If that type of graphic novel fits what we're doing, the high tide raises all ships, which comes back to my time starting as a creator in the studio method. So yeah, all these different pieces through 23 years, I've weaved them together, and I said, this is the best thing I could offer myself. What kind of asshole would I be if I didn't offer that to other people as well that could benefit from it?
I have a quick question and also a response to the people who get into comic business to try to make movies.
Yeah.
That's not, you're not making comics, are you?
Correct.
Anyway, but right, they're pitch decks, right? And that has happened so much, and sometimes it works, whatever. But
you do you, boo, right? You do
exactly. We're not here to make money.
Yeah, right.
But no, I was gonna say, what was it about SourcePoint Press's catalog, and what was, who left, what was left behind, what was it about the history of SourcePoint Press that made you decide to stay and continue SourcePoint Press versus starting your own company?
there's a lot to be said. A lot of people remember Source Point Press very fondly based on what they were in the beginning. And again, they never got Image level. They barely even got like Devil's Due level, right? You know, I mean, and that's not a slight on Image or Devil's Due or anything, but really, you can't. They also had a lot of goodwill with a lot of retailers, and they had enough pieces of infrastructure that made, like Simon and Schuster, for example, that I'd be able to offer creators. Could I rebuild it from the ground up? Yes. But here's the other thing. And that don't, people that know me personally will know how true this is. And people that only know the public persona or what they feel Dirk Manning stands for are going to just try to crucify me for this statement. I didn't want to take over a company that Dirk Manning created. It's not about me. It's not about me. It's about the brand. It's about the creator. So for me, it felt a lot more honest and a lot more of indicative of who I am. I could have started Don't Sell Your Soul publishing, right? No, I would rather plug into this infrastructure so that this isn't Dirk Manning's publisher. This is a publisher that existed. I published with this group for years. Now my hands are on the wheel. Now we're continuing to open the door. And again, I don't want to put you on blast, Dean, but I mean, and other creators can tell you this too. When I was just working with the Source Point, I said, look, this is a deal that could fit for you. Maybe you should talk to Travis and Josh.
Remember that?
Right?
Remember that. Yep.
So I didn't want this to be seen or exist in any fashion as this is Dirk Manning's publisher. It's not. We're all on the same team. I have the same contract as everyone else. Like we joked, we laughed about the money. I'm not making. A mutual peer of ours asked me about this model. He said, "How are you making money on this?" And I told him, I'm not looking to make money off of the creators. Dirk Manning makes money off of Dirk Manning, right? Dean and Vito make money off of Dean and Vito. I just want the company to be able to pay for itself.
Well, to play devil's advocate a little bit, because
Sure.
This is interesting to listen to. I believe I've heard a story about, to bring up Frank Miller again, that when he brought Sin City to Dark Horse Presents, it's going to be published in Dark Horse Presents.
Yep.
Materialized. And I feel like the story is something like how Dark Horse would just publish it and maybe take a little cut. And he said, no, you can take more of a cut. And they were like, why? He said, because the more you invest in my idea, the more you're going to try and
the
sell
more you'll
it.
promote it. Yeah.
And promote it. And you have more invested, in its success, right?
Yes.
So with that in mind, like I would maybe rethink a little bit. I'm not telling you what to do or whatever, but I think a creator wants to know that, like, you're going to put your back into it, as much as you can as a publisher,
Absolutely.
Because guess what? Well, there are a lot of I've had experience with certain creators that don't know how to talk about their work, don't know how to promote it, and then you're doing all the heavy lifting for them, and that can be a little annoying because, like, why are you doing this? But it is what it is. But then there's, like, a lot of people are, for better or for worse, leaning on the publisher to do that kind of heavy lifting,
Yeah.
Is there a market? Do you have a marketing, like, how does that work?
Yeah, well, I'm very transparent about the fact that our model is not going to work for everyone, but it's going to work very well for the people it's designed to work for. I'll just be very, very transparent with you. I am still a creator. That's not the transparent part. Obviously, I'm still a creator.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But here's the transparent part. In my role as publisher, everyone's going to get a certain amount of time.
Okay.
How do you want that time from me? I have been doing this for 23 years. I've had a certain amount of success. I've done over $500,000 on Kickstarter without ever being at Marvel or DC. I have certain things I'm good at, certain things I'm not, right? We have some internal support to help out with people, but you also have to be to a point to work with us that we can match what you're doing. People ask all the time, well, how are you going to promote us? In fact, a creator of mine who's a friend of mine just messaged me today, and he's like, hey, do you have any ins with any of the big media houses? And I told him point blank, I said, most large press is not interested in promoting creator-owned comics.
Yeah.
They're just not. And again, I'm a person that when you get to know me, I'm sometimes offensively honest about stuff. And I'm like, I love this book. I love you. I believe in this book. I love it. But most media outlets do not care about your creator-owned book unless you pay them a ton of money to care about it. And even then, okay, I'm not putting IGN on blast, for example. I've been featured there before myself, but it's like, okay, well, great. Now you had an article on IGN. You're going to feel really good. But here's the real truth. That's not going to sell your book.
Dirk, what moves the needle? Because we're trying to figure it out these days. It is the playing field has leveled in such a way
Correct.
that I don't know
I
where
love this
to
stuff,
go.
man. I'll tell you. I'm going to quote Simon Sinek. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. No one will sell your baby like you will. And let's take this full circle. When we talked about the creation of the Dirk Manning avatar and the Dirk Manning brand, right? I was in Pittsburgh and I was with Joshua Ross, who was one of my longest collaborators in comics. And we had some self-published Nightmare World stuff on the table. Very high quality stuff. Very high quality stuff. And I say that with no ego. I mean, to this day, I will say you can put Nightmare World against anything, any book put up by any publisher, and it's at least level. And I'm sitting there at the table. And again, I'm a shy person. I'm very introverted. And I'm sitting at the table, and Josh is sitting at the table, and we're watching people walk by and walk by and walk by. I'm watching these people walk by, and I see someone walk by like a Phantasm shirt, for example, or some horror thing. I'm like, oh, right on. And I looked down at the table. I looked at Josh. And I said to him, no one will love our babies like we will.
Yeah.
And I stood up. And I am not a carnival barker. I will not shout you down. My hardest pitch at a convention is I'm standing at that, and I stand. And anyone that's ever seen me at a convention knows if I'm sitting, chances are I'm stuffing food in my mouth real fast. I am always standing. I'm always standing.
I can vouch because where my seat was at Three Rivers Con was directly behind Dirk's, and I could see him standing almost all the entire time. There was one time that I saw you sitting, and you weren't eating, and it was because you were looking at the book that I had given you there.
There you go. Right.
Totally
Exactly. Yeah,
different.
right. That yeah. That chances are, truthful Vito, I was probably eating something too, but I was looking. Yeah, it was just.
And the second I came over, you stood up.
Yes,
that was the other part.
Yeah. So what? Because here's the thing. My hardest pitch is if someone stops at my table and looks for a second. Here's my pitch. If anything looks interesting, feel free to check it out.
Absolutely. That's
because
it.
what moves the needle? The creator. And people don't buy what you do as much as they buy what you do it. That's the first part.
Okay.
The second part, sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah, please.
The second part is when you look at my table at convention, when you look at my brand online, right? When you look at anything that I do, when you look at the Dirk Manning avatar, you got a pretty good idea of what I'm about.
Basically.
I'm a horror guy.
Right.
That's it. So people need to be able to identify with what you do, and it's building that brand. And I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to. It's why when people want to go after you, they go after your brand, right? And the thing that I suffered from is I was so private and I was so walled off and I was such a promotion machine. When people chose to tell stories about me, it was very easy to do because there was nothing else behind it.
Had you had to deal with static or whatever in the industry, or
there was a hot minute and it passed, and people are going to believe what they want to believe, right? Point blank. I mean, okay, whatever. My problem was I was so focused on the brand. A friend of mine who was very supportive of me said, "Your Dirk Manning is such a blank slate. Anybody could write any story on it they wanted, and then there was nothing behind it to back it up." And that's when I learned I had to be a little bit more human, right?
Yeah.
So,
you had to show your face.
Yeah. But I had to show my face a little bit more, like let people know. But what moves the needle is the creator. And honestly, I get it. I'm a third generation small business owner. Dirk Manning is a business. And it's hard, man. It's hard. I would love nothing more than to write a book, put it out, and have it sell 1 million copies. The reason there's a lot of reasons that doesn't happen. And one is because I am very fiercely protective of my IP. I will not give you a piece of it so that you want to sell it. I just won't. Now, and there's other people that say, fuck it, man. They just sell their IP all day. And we both know creators that have never worked a day job or anything because they just keep re-upping options. I'm just not wired that way. I'm too punk rock for a metal guy. I just can't. Maybe someday I'll just say screw it and I'll sell the whole library like the Beatles or something. I don't know, but I'm not there.
Give it a year.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Next year. But what moves the needle is the creator. And here's the other piece. What moves the needle? Like I said, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, but your vibe finds your tribe. You have to know your people. It's the power of 1,000. If you find 1,000 people that will invest $100 in you a year, you're making $100,000 a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not,
right.
I can't say it's not difficult, but it is doable. Create high quality work, treat people well, give them value for what they're doing. That's what.
So here's the rub. Here's the rub for me. And you know me, I'm social. I like to hang out. I crave humanity. I am being social. But the amount of showing up to the party, and I always say my whole thing is you got to show up to your own party, right? And showing up means you're not producing as much work. You have to go and be at all the cons. I can't afford the cons. Like this is going to sound a little obnoxious, but the cons I usually go to are the ones I get invited to.
Absolutely.
Because I can't pay for the hotel and the travel. And I don't always make enough to even cover that, whatever that would cost.
Yeah.
So then there's that issue I have. And Vito, I know you're in the same boat.
Yeah, absolutely.
But and as a publisher, I guess you can figure out like certain amount of sales of the catalog of books. You know, you're making me think of Fabrice Sapolsky right now, who has his own book company, you know, where he too has emerged as a creator. When I first met Fabrice, he felt more like a publisher and an editor, you know, and more and more he is an auteur, you know, and that's great for him. But yeah, I get it. I get that, like, and it's almost like we're becoming like a Patreon newsletter age, you know, like I'm sending a newsletter out in the morning to let people know about the show this weekend and whatever else is going on. And then there's the page, you know, people are the term you use was what about they want to buy you or
they don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Why you do it. And I would even offer that they want to just support you because they like you.
Well, you they like obviously. Me or their fellow horror fans. They like that I'm producing horror stuff, right? They go back to Eric Powell. Years ago when Eric Powell had this big conversation with me and it just changed my life. And he talked about the fact that Eric Powell, who again, I think is one of the greatest living artists in comics right now. He's also a hell of a writer. He's a hell of a person. Great guy.
His Ed Gein graphic novel is amazing.
Oh my God. Incredible. So good. So good. And the Goon is just, my gosh. But anyway, so he talked about how he told me this story. And this is one of the things that really maybe not tilted my perspective. I wouldn't say changed it, but also it reaffirmed a lot of things I believe about doing the work. He said, I drew a 4-part Superman Bizarro story with Jeff Johns and Richard Donner. He did that to get eyes on the Goon, partially, and a check, obviously. And you know, and he told me something that again, this just was like so profound. He said, "You know what I found out drawing a 4-issue story arc on Action Comics with 2 of the most identifiable people with that brand? People that read Superman don't want to read a comic about a buck-toothed gangster that fights zombies."
That's true.
Boom.
I mean, too bad. I mean, it's too bad, but it's so, you know, and you're reminding me of my days of going to the comic shop, which I haven't done in a long time because my comic shop was Jim Hanley's that became JHU, which now is only in Staten Island. And I'm not going to Staten Island. In fact, the last time I was there was with Vito because he drove me.
You'll probably be there again in the next couple of weeks while I'm there.
A couple of weeks when we get there, so I'll be going there again. But I don't really go to comic shops anymore. Forbidden Planet, once in a while, whatever.
Right.
But it is that nerd mentality of like this monofixation of what they think well, this happens when you get older too. Like they don't do Superman the way they don't. You have your Superman, you have your Spider-Man.
Right.
Shut the fuck up. Like just go reread the Ross Andrews Spider-Man I used to read, okay, or whatever.
Right. Right.
But
Right.
but it evolves and changes because of the times and everything. But I am proud to say that I'm very open to all kinds of comics. But there is a faction of comic book readers that are just so narrow.
Well, are you a comic book reader? Or are you a Superman fan?
Right. And that's fair. If you only like Superman, then that's all you're going to look for, and then you're going to complain
Right, and
about
that's
that.
fine.
Yeah, it's
I'm
fine.
not trying to sell my stuff to Superman people. I've had this conversation multiple times over the years at conventions where people just look at my table and they look around for a second. And because I wear a suit and stuff, a lot of times people just stop like, who's this guy in the suit that, like you said, looks like a Bond villain or whatever the hell, and and they look around and they go, oh, I say, if anything looks interesting, feel free to check it out. There's my pitch. And they go, oh, I really don't like horror stuff at all. And I'll tell people, I said that honestly, for the most part, you're probably not going to find anything that you like at this table.
Right.
And they look at me like, what?
Right.
Because it's the opposite of the heart. I'm like, look, I'm just gonna be honest with you. I said,
yep.
I do mainly horror stuff. Now I got this book over here, but by and large, I'm a horror guy. And I'm like, so if you're just completely adverse to horror, you're probably not gonna like what I do. Now, I will tell you, I'm not a blood and boobs guy. I'm not a splatterpunk guy. I do more like Twilight Zone, Tales in the Crypt type stuff. That's kind of like my jam. And they say, oh, well, I actually like that kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, well then, like maybe you might be interested in this, but whatever. But it blows people away when I tell them, if you are completely adverse to horror, Dirk Manning's not your guy.
It's funny.
What do you like? Then I can maybe point you in the direction of someone
and
else.
That's fair. And that's how we sell each other, as well.
Right.
I was just reading Savage Dragon number 280 last night, which is the newest issue. I think it came out a week or so ago.
Yep, love Savage Dragon.
I try to read because it's an 80s comic. Like what the hell?
Yes.
Man? Like
it's the most outlaw. It's the most outlaw modern comic out there. I think.
Absolutely. And speaking of, I was reading the letters page, and it was a fan wrote in saying how they've been reading this comic forever, but like, could you please quit with the
corny
sex
stuff? Yeah.
Did you read this letter?
I read it too. Oh, I read.
Did you see his response?
And then I read the letters column back to back.
Yeah. So Eric Larson's response was like, basically the guy was like, could you just cut it out? It doesn't add any value. I don't like it, blah, 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 whatever. And that's fair for that reader. Okay.
Yeah.
But Eric Larson's response was great. And I'm still trying to parse it a little bit. But basically he said, when you go to a restaurant, you can ask the chef how to make your meal because, you can't eat this, or could you add a little spice to that or whatever. He said, buying my comic is like coming to my house or to my mom's house. You're going to eat whatever she puts on the table. And if you don't like it, don't come to my mom's house anymore, or whatever the hell it was.
Don't order fish from a steak place, right? It's
exactly.
Right. But it goes back to, again, what moves the needle is your vibe finds your tribe, right? And as a creator, I have when I did Hope, like Vito, you talked about Hope earlier, right?
Yeah.
It's people, when they saw I was doing that book, they go, oh my God, Dirk Manning's doing a superhero book. And I said, no, I'm doing a book about a superhero. And this is still a Dirk Manning book. And then they see the cover by Kalen Smith, that incredible cover of that first volume. And it's pink. And they're like, oh my gosh, what the hell's going on here? I told them, I said, this is not only a Dirk Manning book, I said, this is the scariest book on my table at this moment. And people go, oh, right, whatever. Then they read the first issue. They're like, holy shit. This is like, you're not kidding. I'm like, no, it's still a Dirk Manning book. So that when I do Veer, and if I do a book about a superhero, or I do an all ages book like The Adventures of Cthulhu Jr. and Friends, right? Or even when I do a wrestling book, or whatever it is that I'm doing, when I do a Native American werewolf book like Homestead, it still reads like a Dirk Manning book because that's my vibe. And I also, to an extent, owe that to the readers, right? But also, like you said, we don't make a ton of money doing this. Our profit margins are very slim. I am doing the things that I love the most, and people react to that. It's like a band, right? If Mike Patton puts something out, I'm going to check it out. I'm a huge Mike Patton fan. I'm going to check out anything he does. And some of the stuff he puts out, because he's so eclectic, I'm like, I know you like this, and I'm glad you did it. But that's not my jam. But hey, man, kudos to you.
The Mike Patton solo sound album was just too much.
Right, yeah. Adult themes for voice, and then
Yeah.
parental around or whatever. Right, it's like, okay, this is a little much. But conversely, and again, I'm not trying to bury the guy, but I'm excited I get to go see Tomahawk on their next tour. I did the Abbott Patent thing he put out, really high quality stuff. It's just, it's not. I look, man, I love Neil Young, I love Americana, but it's not my favorite, right? And that's okay. But our vibe finds our tribe, and what moves the needle is that we build that brand trust, that we can put out something a little divergent, and our people who make it possible for us to do this stuff are, we're being responsible to them. Yeah, I'm going to put a little money in, especially on Kickstarter. I will pre-order your thing, Dirk. Right. And that comes back to the whole source point model too, like we talked about earlier, how we got on this whole tangent when creators say, well, can you help me get into this major news outlet? And I'm like, probably not, because they just don't want to cover you. It's not that you're not high quality. I can't get them to cover me. I've been doing this 23 years, right? But here's what we can do. We can get you cheap printing. I will give you access to every press contact I have, and we will do these things for you to help you move yourself. And by being on SourcePoint Press, that high tide will raise all ships and things like that. So we are going to put some muscle, we are going to put some umph behind you, but ultimately my responsibility is to give you access, give you opportunity, but also to really help you continue to grow your brand and your career.
So who, because you want to return to the scrappy indie creative vibe, with SourcePoint. What, and I'm going to say, what is Dirk Manning looking for SourcePoint? Is there any kind of credo or anything in particular?
I tell creators, when you look at our lineup, we mainly do horror, speculative fiction, pulp, but then we turn around and do, like Joshua Ross did a creative nonfiction memoir called Left Turns, which is about the sacrifices that an artist has to make to pursue a life in the arts, which is horror in its own way, I suppose. But I tell people we look for comics with a sharp edge. What is the most pure? When I look at a pitch from someone, I want I want to feel it. And I go back to one of the first comics I ever read was The Crow by James O'Barr. Anybody who's read The Crow, you feel James O'Barr coming off of every page.
Visceral.
Visceral, exactly. That's what we are looking for. We just published, we're getting ready to publish, we just went to final curve, Natalie Huff's book, My Dearest. I've been talking about this book every chance I get. She's a West Coast creator. This is her first book. She doesn't like to do a lot of social media stuff, but she did an American style horror manga. And it's called My Dearest, and it's about a woman dealing with a stalker. You can tell every page, every panel, she's in it, and it vibrates off the page. That's the stuff that we love. We love stuff that is, you can tell the creator is passionate about it. It's got that sharp edge. What we're not looking to do is a lot of like my version of Batman, my version of Superman. It's like, that's just not our, that's not our vibe, right? We want comics with a sharp edge.
I think I believe Jeffrey Burant, Gonad the Barbarian.
Gonad the Barbarian.
There you go.
Perfect example, right?
That's our buddy.
I tabled next to him in New York, and one of the things we try to talk about, we do very limited nudity, and we even try to keep the profanity to a certain level so that our books can be accessible through libraries and stuff as we move into that point. But when you first look at Gonad the Barbarian, it looks like a cheap, it looks like a cheap joke, right? But it's not.
It's not.
So good, and it's so witty. And when I was telling Josh Werner about this book, I said, look, hear me out. I want you to look at Gonad the Barbarian. And I said, I'm going to tell you right now, it's a book about a testicle with no nudity. Right? But it's funny, and it's sharp, and it's witty. And I'm so excited to have this book on our label. And I know those people are going to look at this and be like, what the hell are you guys doing? And I'm going to say, look at the book and then be the judge.
Yeah.
Now, if you are just totally adverse to gonads, not the book for you.
Nope.
But I will tell you what, I am proud to have this book with our label. I'm proud that Jeff picked us. I am so excited to push this book out there. And that's the other thing. When you talk about the push we give people, this is another thing I tell people. Everyone's going to get their moment. What we do is if you're running a crowdfunding campaign, we're going to do what we can to push that for you. But again, no one will push your book like you will. When your book goes into direct market solicitations, we're going to push you. And my personal newsletter, I have about 7,000 people on my own newsletter. And then my own, we are going, every month I push the SourcePoint books because I say, look, I'm the publisher. These are books I really believe in. But then through the SourcePoint Press social media, we're going to push your book when you're in the direct market, when it's your month. When your window is passed, the next person is going to get that same push. I think one of the delusions a lot of creators have is that the publisher should push their book forever. That's untenable. And that's sometimes
No,
hard to hear. But that's
it's not
untenable.
Watchmen.
No, right. Everyone's going to get your moment. But then when we put your book out again through Simon & Schuster, we're going to push you again.
Yeah.
So really you get 3 pushes from the publisher. And respectfully, combined with the fact that we can get you probably cheaper printing than you get yourself, you get to be part of a collective of other cool creators doing really cool books, and then the other infrastructure support that we give you. What the hell else do you want? We're not going to pay you to make your creator own book. I'm not going to help you get a Hollywood deal because, quite frankly, I'm not interested in that. And I don't want to own your property either. So that's what we offer. But yeah, Gonad the Barbarian, another perfect example. That is a distilled Jeff book. It is so good. It is so fun. And I know people are going to look at it and say, like, what the hell are you doing here? I'm going to say, look at it. Look at it. It's a book about a gonad who's a barbarian with no nudity. It's incredible. It's so funny. It's so good. I'm so excited about that one.
I think we're gonna go to our last question, like the question I sent out and everything, but I do want to say this,
Yeah.
maybe to your credit, maybe to your criticism, whatever, people can take it however they want to take it. There is a element of the juggernaut to you, Dirk, in that the thing, like you just go forward. You know what I mean? Like I don't know, like throughout the conversation that we've had today, I don't know that there was ever a step where I thought you were going back. You know what I mean? We glanced upon it. There's controversy surrounding your name, but I feel like, and I mean, this might be seen as whatever it's going to be seen as. I feel like during this course of the conversation, this started, and then this started happening. And I mean, maybe it's the responsibility of being a publisher. Maybe it's the joy of being the owner of a publishing company that adheres to your aesthetic. I don't know what it is. Like I know that there's and we've talked privately elsewhere. About this.
Here, do you need tissue? You look like you're going to cry there.
Me?
No. Again,
No, Dirk.
When we talk about me personally, I do this. I know that's not a gimmick. That's me. I'm like, no, like,
but you know what I mean?
I want to comment what you're saying, but I want you to finish your thought.
But no, like it's like I feel like that there's a lesson to be learned, and that like I don't know that there's an apology that can ever be satisfactory to everybody, but there is something to be said about somebody who maybe in the face of adversity takes their hits and then just goes, all right, I'm going to get ready. And I'm going to just, try to move forward the best I can. And I don't know. I've told you personally, like I'm always your boy, what I mean? Like, no matter what, like I support, my friends, and like, some of my friends are on the other side of this conversation, but again, like I support all my friends, and I would be remiss to withhold my friendship from you over that because you're my friend.
I have, as you said, I have a magnet on my refrigerator that says, "Don't look back. You're not going that way."
It's good.
And to be fair, my wife bought that magnet, but it's perfect, and it's such an important lesson, and I said this earlier, but I'll say it again. Because of my nature and because I'm a very private person, it gets very easy for people to then put their own story upon you. Have I made personal and professional fuck ups? Yes. And this isn't being cute, and this isn't being cliche. Everybody has. Everybody has. And for those of you listening rather watching, I'm shrugging right now. It's like, okay, you own it, you learn from it, and respectfully, you move the fuck on, right? Um, there's people that will judge you by things they don't like about you forever. There's a whole debate separating the art from the artist, right?
Yeah.
And that's tough, you know. I mean, here, I'll put a name out there. Neil Gaiman.
Mhm.
Wow. There's so many people that made loving Neil Gaiman their identity. And I don't say that as a pejorative. I mean, but that he his image and his work created that cult of personality. And a lot of people really fucking struggle with that. And I get it. But here's what I will say. If you dig deep enough on anybody, you're going to find things that you disagree with about them because we're all individual people, right? And everyone has to make their own decisions. And I want to touch on one thing you said because it's very important to me. You mentioned the fact, well, maybe it's because you own your own publisher now. I tell myself this a lot. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but I will. One of the things I remind myself all the time is people will say that Jesus walked on water because he can't swim. There will be people that will say, well, Dirk Manning owns the publisher now so that he can just do what the fuck he wants. So he can have control, he can have power.
Right.
And that is a narrative that if you know anything about running a publisher, or if you know what I did to assume a dying publisher to open the door to other creators and the money I put in myself to create this, I'm not doing that to get adulation from anybody. I'm not doing that for a goodwill tour. I'm doing that because you know what? I've seen so many people fall victim to so many professionally predatory practices that when I had that little voice, that little angel or devil or whatever it was on my shoulder saying, Dirk, you've always been the guy to talk about paying it forward. Here's another opportunity to do that. And fuck it, I'll say it. The month that I had this opportunity, I paid off my house. I went back into debt to do this. Now, to be fair, it wasn't an exorbitant amount of debt, but like you were saying, Dean, you know what? Sometimes we don't go to conventions because we may not be able to come. We may come out in the hole after our hotel and our meals.
Yep.
That's the margin that's so slim here.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, when you talk about moving forward, and I really appreciate that, man, a lot, because again, I'm not going backwards. And there's going to be people that put an asterisk on my name. There's going to be all of us here. There's people that don't like us for some reason, and maybe it's justified, maybe it's not. Here's what I'm going to say. One, if you got a problem, call me. And if you don't have my number, you don't know me well enough to have a problem with me.
That's good. Yeah.
That's not me being cocky, because there are people who say, well, I have your fucking number and I still have a problem with you. Okay, talk to me about it privately and we can work it out. But if you're not in that place, am I really the problem? Or is there other things going on here? But past all of that, the biggest thing where I'm at now, and this goes back to your stuff about always moving forward. I think the greatest obligation we have to our fellow people, meet them where they're at. Meet them where they're at.
Mhm.
Don't judge me where I was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Meet me where I'm at now, because I will always give anybody that. Now, don't get me wrong. There's people that I've had fallings out with this in this industry, personally and professionally, that we will never speak again.
Mhm.
You know what? So be it, man. That's life.
Mhm.
I'd like to be the bigger person. I would like to. Sometimes I can forgive, but not forget. And sometimes I can't even forgive.
Yeah.
I look, man, there's some cuts that go too deep. Cool. But you know what? The greatest gift I give them, I don't bring their name up. Because I don't know where they're at now anymore. They're not part of my life. They're not part of my circle. I'm just going to meet you where you're at. And if I can't meet you where you're at, then I have no business talking about you. So I really appreciate what you said about moving forward, because that's it. I don't look backwards. I'm not going that way.
I mean,
I appreciate what Vito's saying too. And full disclosure, I don't really know what the controversy is that we're talking about, just to give you a heads up. And but I know you from how we've interacted at Baltimore and
right.
talk about Source Point Press and that kind of stuff. So
yeah, man. And
that's why. But I will say this: we're all complicated.
Yeah.
I have people who hate me, for whatever reasons,
right.
Justified or not. I think we all, as the older we get, I'm 59 years old. If I don't have somebody hates me, I did something wrong. I mean, I don't mean it that way, but you know what I mean.
What was that Green Arrow thing? I can't remember if it was Brad Meltzer or Kevin Smith. Oliver Queen's gravestone made all the right enemies. But yeah, I mean, and again, I hate even bringing it up because
it's not something that we planned on or anything like that. But
sure.
I'm sure that some people are going to leave comments like, oh, but I mean, again,
fuck this guy or whatever. I'm like,
but I think if you don't listen to this show from beginning to end and not see an evolution of a person who has grown for over 23 years of being a professional, I think you're going to have to listen again.
Also, and Vito, me and Vito, at the very beginning of doing this weekly thing that we do, our show isn't like a hot topics show necessarily. We're not here we're not gotcha guys. That's not what we're about, So
we did zero pre-planning. We jumped. We have one question which we still have to answer.
Yeah, we're gonna get to
that. We had the one hot topic, but that was it, right? And I, and again, I'm not going to betray any confidence either, but I've had private conversations over the years about different things, and okay, man. But again, I want you to know, man, I really appreciate what you said, and it was very hard for me to start to lower this.
Yeah,
not because I'm hiding shit, not because any duplicitous reason. It's because I just don't want it to be about me. I've always wanted to be about the work. But it's like what I then said to you, Dean, people don't invest in what you do, they invest in why you do it. And I had to realize that people had to get to know me a little bit more, for better or for worse, because otherwise people will put their own narratives upon you.
Yeah,
and I didn't like that, but that's the world we live in.
No, and that's a good lesson to learn from all of this. Is like, I remember I went to see Warren Ellis at a Barnes and Noble signing for what I don't remember. It might have been for Normal, a book he had written.
Yep.
And a studio mate of mine asked him, "Can you give me one piece of advice for writing?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Tell the truth." And also, and it takes a while to get there. It takes a while, and in my own writing, I'm like, am I telling the truth? And I don't mean like because you have a dirty secret. It's more like, what is the truth? Like be honest in your work,
right?
And what do you want to say? But also, the other thing that's fun about writing is an unreliable narrator, right? Like a lot of characters that lie to each other is always fun.
Well, it's funny. Like last night, we were Dean and I had a conversation, and I'm not going to go into the details of it, but I said to him at one point, I was like, if people can't see that the person I was in 2006 is not the same person that I am in 2026, that like I grew and that I settled down with a good, fantastic woman, that I have two great kids. That I, adore. If you can't see that I've changed, then I guess it's kind of like you were saying about meeting somebody where they are. Like I can apologize for who I was back then, but I'd like for you to meet the guy that I am today. You know what I mean? I'd like for you to get to know me, who I am. Maybe I was a dick to 5 or 6 people, like over the course of 20 years, but
maybe I'll own that. Right. Well, that's it. And again, some people, because you didn't have a Snickers that day and you're an asshole, will never forgive you.
Right.
That's their right.
So,
right. I mean, but then conversely, you also have to respect people where they are. And like I said, that's, I think, sometimes the greatest grace you can give someone and the greatest amount of integrity you can give is, you do you, I'm going to do me, and we do that. And that's not, again, that's not dodging accountability, but it's like, meet me where I'm at now, or let's just go our own ways.
And Vito, before we get to the last question, because there was something that Dirk said that is one of the reasons why with my Kickstarter comics that I do, which are comic books, they don't have a spine, they're not a book yet.
Right.
You were saying how Source Point Press is publishing graphic novels
Correct.
and I guess collections with spines. Let's just do this really quickly. There was a Marvel rumor. Did you hear this Marvel rumor about they may not publish comic books anymore? That they might go digital. Do you think that's going to happen?
I've been saying that since the early 2000s that eventually the I hate the word floppy, but the floppies are going to go away and
become digital.
Well, because digital floppies, print collected editions. Because here's the thing. There's people that collect floppies, but book people like books. Those of you that see, look at this office. Graphic novels everywhere. Book people like books, and the profit margin is much bigger.
Right.
That's why we don't do single issue at Source Point Press. I tell people it does not help you. So I tell creators, I mean to hijack this, Dean, I apologize, but
please. That's why I'm asking. Yeah.
I tell people, like, let's say, I don't know, you got a creator who's doing a real cool book, for example, like World War Mob, for example, doesn't have the full amount of money to do a trade paperback up front. Got wife, got kids, got other obligations, it's expensive, whatever it may be. We have deals in place with creators where I tell them, kickstart your issues. Take the time to do what you got to do. When you get to the trade, and we'll give you a publishing agreement that knows when you get to the trade, I'm not putting you on blast, Vito, but just the example I have handy. When you get to the trade, we can probably help you get cheaper printing on a trade paperback than you can get on your own. We can get you distribution, and then you get the clout, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent, of being on a publisher with all these other creators we have.
Is this kind of like the Image deal, would you say, a little bit?
It's a big part of it. It's a big part of what I would consider the early Image deal.
Early Image, yeah.
Right, you know, and again, that's not slamming Image now
at all.
The Image I was at when I was with Image is different than I think in some ways than the Image of now. But here's the thing: so people that ask me, is my role as publisher, they say, okay, well, how much of the cut of the floppies are you going to take? And you guys probably know my answer: 0.
Well, it's like I was telling you at Pittsburgh in Three Rivers.
Yeah,
that floppies are a loss leader. So why do you why would you want to lose? Like,
right?
And why do publisher it makes more sense to not do floppies.
Right. And why would I want to make your cut even lower? I don't. I want you to be successful. Right. Find out if you think there's going to be an audience so you can invest in 500 to 1,000 trade paperbacks. Because you do the first issue of a Kickstarter of World War Mob, for example, and it doesn't hit. That tells you one of two things: either you didn't market it well, or this isn't the vibe for your tribe.
Right.
They want more strength. Or maybe they want the book, wherever it may be. So yeah, but I also, again, my own disposition, right? We always view everything from our own perspective. I've said for 20 years now, publishers are one day going to turn off the spigot on issues and just go to the trade paper, digital issues, and the trade paperback. It hasn't come true yet, but now this is bubbling up again with Marvel and I think even DC. And I think Rob Liefeld jumped in. Oh, it's going to happen. But to me, paper's expensive. Let me tell you, as a publisher, paper's expensive. And one of the issues we've dealt with on some big orders is you can't get enough paper. That's a thing. That's a thing. So where are you going to? I didn't mean to steal that.
No. Thank you. No, you're the guest, and I'll just say I have consciously created what I believe are done in one 24 to 40 page stories, where hopefully you feel satisfied by that experience. But if it is part 1 of 4, and I've talked to Vito about this, maybe, especially in independent terms, maybe it needs to be a graphic novel. You know, maybe you put out the whole story because, like, it takes a year or 2 between issues, or a year or 6 months or whatever between issues. And that's not the culture we grew up in. In fact, the culture we grew up in was done in one. You would get a very packed story in 20.
But at the same time, Kickstarter has changed the culture.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether we acknowledge it or not, the culture has changed. Again, like, I'm not going to defend floppies. You know, I do them, but like, I'm not going to defend them to the point. It's not a hill that I'm willing to die on.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's an entry point.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know enough. I know your superhero stuff, right? I don't know if you can do a war comic, but you know
Right.
what? If I see you at Three Rivers, see you at a show, shout out to John and Town, I'll spend $5 on this
Right.
and write on. And then you know what I'm going to do as a reader? I'm going to wait for the trade because that's what I collect.
Right.
I love you, but I've got even this cavernous office I seem to be in right now. I only look. I love you, man. I love you personally. I love you, Brooke. I only got so much room, dude. and and even in corporate comics, you know what half of the floppy is, or a third of it, or whatever? Ads.
Yeah.
Even if you take trade paperbacks and put them in short boxes, compare your trade paperback run of X-Men or whatever to the floppies and see how much less room it takes up. I'm going to need a pyramid when I die, right? For all my stuff. Or I'm building the world's coolest estate sale or not, right? So yeah, I mean to run away with that, Dean, but I love.
No, I do want to. We're getting to this question.
We're getting there, right?
But I had to give a shout out to just a couple little pop culture things to date this show. I watched the last season of The Bear, and anybody was watching The Bear? No,
not yet. It's on my. I heard it's good. It's on.
Oh, it stuck the landing. It stuck the landing. It's
that's
over.
Great.
You
I think
seemed,
it did great.
Concerned last week.
Yeah, because it's a very indulgent show on food. And by the way, I was also doing a 2-day prep for my colonoscopy, and I'm watching 4 episodes of The Bear at a time, starving to death at what they were making. Anyway,
and then get your colonoscopies. Don't be proud.
Oh, absolutely. Get your colonoscopies.
You get it done, and you move on. Right.
It's great.
It's great.
I knew that Maggie Gyllenhaal's The Bride was controversial. I saw it. I did not like it. It looks great. I did not. It's kind of a mess. It's a little bit of a mess. I didn't even know what I watched really.
More sizzle than steak.
Yeah, but I don't think it was intentionally sizzled. In other words, it wasn't just style over substance. Like there's a lot of substance that it didn't really work for me.
All right.
So, and I loved Bang My Box, the Robin Bird story, because I grew up with Robin Bird.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys know who.
I didn't know
Vito
about
does.
this.
Oh my God, it's on. I think it's on HBO and maybe other places.
Ooh.
The Robin Bird. She basically was cable access television. She was like like a new, not talk show. Like
she was an adult film star at one point, and then she got into
transition. Yeah,
on the same cable
Sex
access
Positive
as
Midnight Blue with Al Goldstein.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, stuff like that. It was great time. It was like the perfect time, just as AIDS was rearing its head. Yeah. We had this sex positive thing going on TV. And then I saw Project Hail Mary, and first of all, Ryan Gosling is one of the best actors. I don't even know if he's acting. I think he's just being Ryan Gosling.
I just started rewatching The Nice Guys last night.
Oh, that's great. The Nice Guys,
amazing.
But and it's a very adorable movie. I'll put it that way. It's definitely for kids.
The only negative thing I've heard about that movie is that people that love the book wish there was even more of the book in it. But then they're always quick to say, "But the movie's great."
Yeah, the movie's great. Movie's great. It's adorable. Okay, Vito.
Yeah. So I asked the question.
What was your question? How did you pose it?
The question I asked of my 2 friends here was just an honest, good. We used to have these conversations in Jim Hammer's universe, and the conversation came up once: can Batman lift Thor's hammer? And I got into this kind of debate with a customer. I was like, no, Batman's got a dark soul. He can't, he's never going to be worthy. So it made me think, all right, I got 2 creators. What creators do we think can lift the hammer of Thor? And I have 4 nominees.
Oh, wow.
I know Dean knows 2 of them. But I'm going to throw them out. Joe Staton, who is the co-creator of Guy Gardner, who also the co-creator of E-Man. Joe Staton, if you know him, is one of the nicest, most sincere, genuine people you will ever meet. Ever.
I didn't even. You're totally right about Joe Staton.
100%. I didn't think about that, but that's amazing.
He's just an incredible, and his wife Hillary, just 2 of the most incredible.
Yeah.
Number 2, my other nominee was Jose Luis Garcia Lopez.
Oh my God, yes.
As a mentor, as a teacher, We call him the maestro, in Spanish. Like, just the man just exudes positivity. I've never met anybody, maybe George Perez for the 5 minutes that I met him, that was so positive about comics and about the power of comics that he right there, if he can't lift the hammer for, who can? And then my last two are a married couple, Walt Simonson, but I think the more worthy is Louise Simonson. And I don't have a metric for why one of them is worthier than the other. But something about Louise just makes me think, God, she would just kill it as a Thor. Like, just, I don't,
yeah,
it's so weird, but
no,
Absolutely.
that's
Those
funny.
are great. Those are great.
So who do you got there?
Yeah, Dirk.
Yeah, I'm gonna go before
you go, Dirk.
All right. First one, my first two that immediately jumped to my head. I feel that they're so obvious it's a cheat. Jack Kirby.
Yes. Not, you don't even have to say it.
Yeah. Enough said. Right.
Enough said.
Enough said. Will Eisner.
Oh, great one. Yeah.
I mean, come on. Right. And then I'm like, gosh, and I'm picking people who are gone. And then, of course, I thought of the late, great George Perez.
Well, you did think of Perez as well.
Another one, which I have George, but I was like, man, just a nice guy. I'm like, my gosh, these are all people that are deceased. And for my Mount Rushmore, right? Because you think of the four, this is gonna sound like a self-serving cut, and it's not. And I'm going to give an example of why I picked this person. Those who know, it's Josh Werner, who's chief creative officer of SourcePoint Press. He's also done a lot of his own comics on his own. He helped co-found the company back in the day. I'm going to give you one quick example of why, so it doesn't sound like I'm just doing a cheap plug here. One of the creators we were working with, who I'm not going to name, getting their book published, we're getting their book ready to put out through distribution. We get an email out of the blue. Josh emails this creator and said, hey, by the way, through some print brokering, I was able to save you, I think it was $219. As the guy that's in charge of doing all the print brokering, he could have just saved $219 and could have pocketed it through the company that he works through to do that. No one would have known the difference.
Yeah.
No one would know the difference. And you might even argue that operating at the scale that our logistics partner is Whalebacker. So Josh Werner also works with Whalebacker, which is a company that Travis McIntyre went on now to run now that he's out of SourcePoint. He could have looked good to Travis and said, by the way, I was able to pad us another $219. He made a point to email the creator and said, by the way, your print bill is now X. I was able, through some negotiations, to save you $219. That's meals at a convention for a weekend for a creator. Yeah. That's at least a night of a decent hotel, or 2 or 3 nights, depending on how many people you're splitting it with. So Josh Werner, a lot of creators that have worked with him know what a good soul he is, what a hardworking guy he is. One of my conditions of running SourcePoint was that Josh has to stay with me because of his talent, but also he helped co-found that company. I said, I'm not going to pick up the name of the company without you still with us. So it may sound self-serving, and again, people can say whatever they want to say about it, but in my heart, it is Josh Werner because that's the type of guy he is.
That's sweet. That's sweet.
Yeah, Dino.
So the only hammer I can pick up, all right, is the one you can get for $8 at IKEA, I think. And I've looked at it.
Hammer too, right?
A claw hammer, of course. Dude, I was having a tough time with this, and then it came to me, and then there was other candidates, and like I love that you said Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, and to me the first what finally gelled was Linda Berry.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Linda Berry is the sweetest person.
Absolutely.
And so giving with her art and her craft.
Yeah.
And has the amount of lessons that you can learn, that she gives to other teachers and artists and creators and makes it unintimidating. Right. The form. And again, it's just a sweet. Now I don't know her personally. I've met her once maybe or twice and shook her hand kind of a thing. but everything I've ever seen about her and what she has done to me is like a person that would be worthy enough to pick up that hammer. And when we haven't even discussed what is the worth of picking up Thor's hammer, like what kind of nobility are we talking about here,
I think it's
because
inherent. I think we know, like, it's funny, with the exception of Josh, who I don't know and I've never met, everyone we've mentioned, like, none of us have gone, yeah, that's not the guy.
It's a no-brainer, right?
Yeah, we've all agreed, and I think we know inherently what those qualities are.
and
Go ahead.
well, I was going to say, because also I do believe that you have to have, in order to understand good, you have to understand bad, and you have
Sure.
to maybe experienced something bad or done something bad to understand. Because I'm not religious, as you know, Vito, but I am big on redemption and second chances and third
Hey,
chances, to the point
You
where
can't have peaks
it's,
without valleys.
yeah.
yeah, exactly. So it's that contrast,
Mhm.
Then obviously I had Kirby on here, the Simonsons, and then I wanted to mention, this was another obvious one. Right after Linda Berry, Amanda Connor.
Oh,
Oh,
interesting. Yeah,
I mean, have you
she's
ever hung out
what
with
a
her?
kind soul.
What a kind soul. And to be married to Jimmy Palmiotti, I mean, you're lifting that hammer all day long.
Come on.
You're trying
I
to swing it. No, I love Jimmy Palmiotti.
let me tell you
Godfather of Kickstarter comics.
a quick Amanda anecdote. I don't know, I don't remember how I met her. It feels like I've always known her. And there was a San Diego Comic Con where I was literally spending the entire weekend hanging out with her brother. And it's
Hmm.
like, like, how much more, I don't want to say in can you be, but like, I'm spending time with her family, like, and just, I don't feel like I know Amanda that well at the time, but now I feel like, I'm comfortable enough with her and Jimmy that, like, I can spend any kind of time with
Oh,
them.
and I'm going to see her this weekend at IC3, because
Yeah,
another thing, I know this is coming out on, we usually publish
Monday.
on a Monday. So I've already experienced IC3 slash First Coast Comic Con in Florida in Jacksonville, and then I'm going to go visit my mom. So she'll be there with Jimmy because they live in Florida.
Yeah,
The other person, believe it or not, and I have a couple other names on here. Have you hung out and talked to and seen the way N Ascenti operates in comics?
I haven't, but just
She
based
is
on
so giving and thinking about that person and
our conversation.
trying to put people in front of her. And like she is now, I'm sure she's got some skeletons because she's an interesting cat. You know what I'm saying? So, uh, but I I still think she could pick up that hammer. Um, and then I have a list of like names that like I just think they're such genuinely good people and are at least trying to honor that hammer
Yeah,
as human beings with the bad and the good. And I'm sure there's some, it's what makes them interesting. Would be like a Mark Wade, J.M. DeMatteis, you
yeah.
know.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
I've worked with a great editor, Paul Kaminsky, who I think is genuinely a good person, like of above and beyond in a lot of ways. He's probably had to make a lot of hard decisions as an editor as he rose the ranks, but I I I feel he's a good person. And I've had the pleasure of sharing a studio with Mike Cavallero.
Oh,
Do you know Mike
Wow, yeah,
Cavallero?
that's good.
such a
I mean,
sweetheart of a human being.
he really
Really
goes
is.
out of his way to help other people and
What's the
causes.
funny thing about Mike? Mike has such a deadpan kind of delivery to his kindness, you
Yeah.
could say, that, you know, I was in the studio with you guys, and
Yep.
Mike was down the hall, and Mike was looking over some lettering that I had done, and like he's so like generous of giving of the advice, but it's such a mean voice coming, like not mean, but just like, you don't want to do that. You
Well,
want to,
he
you know what I mean?
exactly. He does not quibble,
No, no.
like,
Right.
and then finally, and we've had him on the show, but I really genuinely feel Russ Kazmierzak.
Oh my God, yes,
Hmm.
absolutely.
He's
Hmm.
like he's done his what 60 some odd issue, whatever, how many issues of his zine,
Amazing
and
Arizona comics, yeah,
Amazing Arizona Comic, and he's just a really good guy, really
yeah.
nice.
I agree.
So
I think he gets the hammer.
he
And
gets the
what's
hammer.
funny is, like, I'm thinking of like a Greg Rucka, who is a really genuinely great guy, but I think he would even say that there's stuff that he can't like some darkness in him that he can't exercise, which makes for a great writer, for sure.
Right.
And to him, I would say you might not get Thor's hammer, but you definitely get Cap's shield.
Right on, man. What a great analogy. Can you since Dean, the last person on your your Mount Rushmore was Amanda Connor. I feel this is if I can be so presumptuous, a wonderful way to bring this full circle and maybe even wrap it up. When I was at a show years ago, when I was with Image with Shadowline with Jim Valentino under Jim Valentino's label at the time, but I had my own table in Artist Alley, and I want to say it was Where's World Chicago. Amanda had just started really blowing up. Amanda's always been very talented, but the promoter, and this is I think maybe one of the first C2E2, it was Where's World. It was like the last Where's World Chicago or the first C2E2, but she was in the middle of the aisle. And those of us that do conventions know when you have the really big power hitters, you put them on the end. Right? Because that way you can wrap the line easier. Her line was like all the way down the row, and it was just smothering all of us. Like, here we are tabling, and then here's the row of Amanda people. And again, they're not looking at our stuff. They're just waiting to get to Amanda. And multiple times at that table, Amanda was like, everyone. She's like, I need all of you to take 4 steps back. And she kept directing the line to stay down the middle of the aisle in Artist Alley.
Awesome.
She did not have to do that. She could have sat there and just, done her thing and signed her books and stuff like that. But multiple times, and you could tell she's even a little, I don't want to speak for her, but seemed like that's not an easy thing to do as a creator, is to like tell all of your people there to see you, by the way, everybody, do this thing for me.
Yeah.
But again, it was one of those moments earlier in my career when I was like, this is someone that's doing it right. And she cared because she didn't want everyone else to get choked out because she was having success.
Yep.
She, again, the high tide to raise all the ships. And everyone listened, of course. They just, instead of going like this, they went up and over, and she kept that line as much as she could in the center of the aisle. And that was just really cool.
Bravo.
I think we got
our raises all ships. It's simple, man.
I think we got our Thor core.
Thor core.
Well, thank you, Dirk. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, guys.
Man. I love talking.
Thanks, Dirk.
I will talk to you, at any opportunity I get.
I appreciate
Dean, it. Please have I think we're all traveling this weekend, funny enough. So everybody have a safe travel. Monday, we'll all be back home. I'll be in New York as of tomorrow. So when we next meet Dean, I will be in a different room with different acoustics.
Yep.
Sound all shoddy.
A different toilet.
different seat in the back. Right.
Yeah. But thank you, everyone, for joining us. We appreciate every single one of you. Again, there's always a link down below to donate to the show. If you want to get a T-shirt from the show, it's down below as well. I will be running a Kickstarter for The Beast Within. That'll be announced relatively quickly for the Stray one-shot that will be coming out in time for Baltimore. Dean and I will both be at Baltimore. Dirk, you going to Baltimore this year?
If I am a 5-time Ringo Award nominee, I will be at Baltimore.
Very good. All right.
But people can see dirkmanning.com has my convention schedule. You can see where I'm bouncing around. But I hope to see you both at Baltimore.
Yeah. We'll be there. So thank you, everybody. And thank you, Dean. Have a good night.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Thanks.